So today, October 28th, 2025, is the 100th anniversary of the discovery of Pharaoh Tutankhamun's burial mask or funerary mask, and likewise his body as well. And I decided to talk about the connection between Tomb Raider, specifically classic Tomb Raider, and my love or infatuation for ancient Egypt. When I was a child, maybe 5 or 6 or thereabout, I was really interested in Tomb Raider. The first game I remember playing was Tomb Raider 4: The Last Revelation. Lara Croft was the first video game character I could name, and I remember searching Tomb Raider on the family computer, Windows Vista by the way, in the living room, and being so fascinated that she was visiting places that were actually real. And I loved the idea of being able to search Tomb Raider on the internet and find any information related to the games. And I discovered that there were more Tomb Raider games outside of just the classic ones. It was awesome. I became particularly fascinated by ancient Egypt and ancient civilizations in general. Ancient Egypt is featured quite predominantly in Tomb Raider 4, not only the gods and the mythology, but also the locations, and it even has real-life structures and monuments from Egypt, including to, but not limited to, the pyramids and the Sphinx. I remember installing Google Earth and thinking it was the coolest thing ever because I could virtually visit anywhere on Earth and see exactly what it looks like. You could even use Street View to walk the streets of anywhere in the world, provided the Street View was available. It was absolutely the most fascinating thing I'd ever seen. It gave me a vested interest in geography at such a young age. I could explore anywhere in the world from the comfort of my parents' house. I especially loved using the historical imagery to see how places looked decades ago through aerial imagery, whether through helicopters or weather satellites or whatever it may be. I had quite the interest in Machu Picchu as well, an ancient civilization on a mountainside in Peru that was abandoned, yet the structures remain. I guess what interested me the most was the fact that you can see remnants from ancient civilizations. You can more or less get a glimpse into the past. I really loved looking at the Egyptian structures, especially on Google Earth. I developed a fascination for different languages, people, and cultures. I was so interested in seeing just how different people could be, and I was absolutely fascinated by the idea of languages. I was especially interested in Japan because most of the games I thought were cool came from there. Specifically for ancient Egypt, I was first exposed to it through Tomb Raider 4, and I quickly became interested in learning about it. Granted, there's only so much that a child can learn about something, but the aesthetics of Egypt really stuck with me. The Egyptian art and hieroglyphics, along with all the statues, structures, and documentation, it all intrigued me. I remember checking out a book from the school library about ancient Egypt and even began researching it through the internet as well. I especially was fascinated by the pyramids and the Sphinx. I wanted to know exactly how they got there and who made them, and I was so interested in all of the other structures the Egyptians made too, and I loved seeing all the tombs and monuments in the Valley of Kings and other places as well. What stood out the most to me was the burial mask of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. The entire story surrounding Tutankhamun is exceptionally fascinating by itself. A pharaoh who was quite insignificant in the grand scheme of things and subsequently forgotten, yet revered in death. The mask was just uniquely Egyptian, something you just didn't see from any other civilization. His mummified body was so fascinating to me too. The idea of a person that lived 3,400 years ago could still be viewed and his body was just simply sitting there. You could also physically see someone who walked the earth 3,400 years ago. At such a young age, it was hard for me to grasp just how long ago that was. Of course, I continued to learn more about it as I got older. Tutankhamun does get a bit of spotlight on the Times Magazine exclusive level of Tomb Raider 4, included in the excellent remasters as well, but Lara goes and explores his tomb. That particular level was the most interesting to me alongside the Egyptian levels in Unfinished Business, which is an expansion from the first game. I really enjoyed the Egyptian levels in the Tomb Raider games, and Tomb Raider 4 is a game that is quite special to me, and it's one of the earliest memories that I have. Me and Lara have been pretty well acquainted for around 20 years now, which is hard to imagine. She truly was my first gaming hero. The pyramids were also a curiosity to me. You can literally see structures that are 4,500 years old. It's incredible. There are dozens of pyramids that they built, probably up to like 100, 120. But usually the three Great Pyramids are the ones people usually refer to. After all, those are the most significant ones. They weren't even the first either, as the Step Pyramid, Bent Pyramid, and Red Pyramid predate them. There's also the possibility that they built more that we just don't know of. But between 2600 BC and 2500 BC, the Great Pyramids were constructed for the pharaohs Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. My apologies, by the way, if I mispronounce anybody's name. The Sphinx was created around the same time as Khafre's pyramid and even bears his likeness. But the Sphinx wasn't constructed, it was carved out of a pre-existing rock structure, whereas the pyramids were constructed with limestone blocks that were carved out of a nearby quarry. Tomb Raider 4 does mention the Dream Stele, which was installed by Pharaoh Thutmose IV around 1400 BC to essentially justify his position as pharaoh. To keep it simple, there's a bit of controversy over his position as pharaoh, and he erroneously believed the Sphinx was created specifically for him, sort of like a prophecy that he would become the pharaoh if he renovated the Sphinx and cleared all the sand away. The Sphinx was already around 1,100 years old, roughly, by the time Thutmose lived. In the Tomb Raider games, you always have some sort of a threat that tries to fight you, whether it's a wolf, other people, or ancient gods. Lara is always constantly fending for her own survival. You even have to fight Cleopatra's guards, and later on, Set in Tomb Raider 4, Set the, Egyptian god. You don't have to in real life, obviously. I mean, sometimes you have to deal with alligators, and not just in Tomb Raider. Of course, Tomb Raider is a fictional story. Many aspects of Egypt are exaggerated or simply fabricated for the sake of entertainment and drama. But Egypt is just as interesting in reality. You most likely won't be attacked by a mummy when you visit Egypt, but Lara Croft probably will. If this game were 100% realistic, Lara could just go to like the British Museum and see a lot of Egyptian artifacts, or she could just go as a tourist to visit the pyramids. But realism isn't exciting. This is a video game. We need entertainment. So of course she's going to go out and fight ancient gods. And yes, it's awesome. It's fair to say that my particular curiosity for Egypt and other ancient civilizations was caused by Tomb Raider. I wanted to be exactly like Lara Croft when I was older, exploring the world, searching through ancient abandoned tombs, hoping to find relics and artifacts. Of course, that isn't exactly the most feasible thing for somebody to do. I naturally fell in love with Indiana Jones, the Mummy movies, and even the Uncharted games because they were quite similar. It's hard to know for certain just how much Tomb Raider influenced me. It sort of planted the seed of curiosity, and then me having internet access also helped a lot with it as well. Is it possible that my interest and knowledge of Egypt is because of Tomb Raider? Yeah, it probably most likely is. I would love to see a future Tomb Raider game take place in Egypt, or at least have something involving Egypt. I think it'd be interesting. Now, I understand that Egypt is a very popular location amongst the classic Tomb Raider games because it's mentioned in Tomb Raider 3 when she goes to this natural history museum in London, and Tomb Raider 4 takes place almost exclusively in Egypt. And of course, there's like the flashback missions early in the game. And Tomb Raider Anniversary, which is basically a remake of the first game, also has the Egyptian levels as well. But I think it'd be interesting to see Lara explore other parts of the world as well. I mean, let's be honest, at this point, just getting a new Tomb Raider game in general would be awesome. Like, seriously. But this is just sort of a simple video of me describing how my particular curiosity for Egypt is caused exclusively by a video game that I played as a child and fell in love with and became enamored by. Of course, I would still consider Lara Croft to be my absolute favorite video game character ever. It's a bit of a tight race with other characters, but Lara Croft has always stood out to me, and ever since I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, I've always been a fan of Tomb Raider. I've always loved Lara Croft. I was a huge fan of the Survivor trilogy as well that came out, and I've always loved the Egyptian stuff, and in some sort of a way, when I see all the Egyptian stuff, like ancient Egypt history and everything, it does remind me of Tomb Raider. And I just know that Tomb Raider was the catalyst for me discovering an entirely new world, per se. And for that, I think I'm very grateful. So, Lara Croft, one of my gaming heroes, still to this day.